Hello and welcome to this February update of the Yarslow Model Railway entitled End of the Line. I just want to start by having a few words about mental health. During lockdown and post-pandemic, there's been a lot of chat about men's mental health, and we're rubbish at talking about it, aren't we? We have a bad day, bad week, whatever, things not going so well. We're garbage at sitting down and sharing our feelings. So if you've got a colleague who's perhaps not been himself or clearly, not functioning on all cylinders, how about letting him know that you are at the end of the line, that you're there for a beer, a coffee, come and play some trains, whatever, just so that he knows he's got somebody to talk to. It works wonders. I've never been wildly happy with all of the wiring between the point motors and the relays in the storage sidings, and when it started to become less than 100% reliable, it got to the end of the line, and therefore I started to prune away all of the wire I didn't need. Now you'll see in this photo that the way this works is that the motor and the switch and the relay are all wired onto a tag board, and then the tag boards are wired together, and that was great when I was building them, but it does mean there's an awful lot of wire that I don't need, so they've been thinned out. And this is how they look now. The tag boards have gone. The wires that run between the relay and the switches are direct, and the wires that run to the point motors are direct. And of course, inevitably, that means that an awful lot of wire and tag boards have been removed, and this little pile here is just from the entrance side of the down sidings. There's another pile equally as large on the exit side. And in fact, funnily enough, I haven't done the upline sidings because they've been very, very reliable. I did those first. So what happened when I got to the front of the board and did the down sidings, whether I was starting to rush because I wanted to get the job done, or whether my soldering iron wasn't working as well as it should, or whatever, I don't know. But I have now taken all this stuff away, and the sidings work a lot better than they used to. Now, for a lot of my little plastic passengers coming in on the suburban surfaces from Midworth and from the longer distance stuff from Northborough coming down the coastline, the end of the line means Trinity Square, and that's where I've been spending a lot of time doing a lot of work in the last 5 or 6 weeks or so. The platform tops have been put in, my usual 50 thou or 40 thou plastic card with the cut Slater's edging, and I've used the Slater's 414 sheets complete for the concourse area. I've also started to muck around with that building that's been sitting around as the office, parcels office, for some time. I've given it a canopy, I've changed the roof profile to one that I prefer, and I've mocked up an entrance wall that's on the diagonal of the board as you walk between Trinity Square and Yarslow, and this is just a pair of gates, and I can see this as being the entrance for trucks or whatever coming into the parcels office. The canopy itself is very simple, it's just cards stuck on. I feel there's going to be a doorway here so that people coming into the parcels office have got somewhere to come and deposit their parcels for the railway. The actual sheets themselves, the 414 sheets, I used 3 or 4 on the concourse area, and I've just used the bog standard filler just to fill the gaps between the sheets, and then with a sharp tool to run out the gaps between the paving stones, and eventually that whole area will look as if it's all one piece. And incidentally, while I was at it, I filled that gap in the goods platform, and then using the same technique that I've used at Yarslow, very fine grade sandpaper has been cut and fitted onto the platforms at Trinity Square. I have to say, a lot easier than Yarslow because the platforms here are broadly straight. They're not necessarily parallel, the two sides, but they're much straighter than they were at Yarslow, and it was only the curves at the ends that caused me any real issue. As before, I use EvoStick contact adhesive to stick it all down, so an afternoon's work and you find the platform tops in place. Now, as I said before, this is not a video channel that runs how to do it. This is what I do kind of videos. I talk more about the kind of the why than anything else. And what I would stress here is that the methods of making my platforms were practiced with a gash piece, just to get the heights right, the structure right and everything else. Once you know how to make your platforms, you just expand out and build the platforms that you want. It's not a good idea to have started here at Trinity Square practicing on making platforms. You need to do that practice before you start. And of course, once you find the technique, in my case 40 thou tops, strip edging and sandpaper, once you find your technique, you simply multiply that out. Now, one of the things that I've been wanting to do for a long time is to enhance the loco area by putting in some inspection pits, and so I bought these Pico inspection kits, 2 of them, one for each road, and each of these kits make up into about 11.5–12 inches of inspection pit. The instructions incidentally just say cut a hole in your baseboard. Well, that might be a great idea if you haven't laid the track and you've just got 2 lines where your track is going to go, because you can get your power saw out and away you go. But once the track has already been laid, that isn't as simple as it sounded, and in fact it was quite a faff putting these in around the existing track. However, we got there. We need a bit more extra wiring because using one kit involves using 2 bits of rail. There's no join between those 2 bits of rail, so they recommend that you run a feed line to the other end of the pit, which in my case meant extending the isolator section. So once both pits were in, I've laid caulk, as I have done in the permanent way area, to bring the ground level up to the top of the sleepers, and given the whole thing a covering in filler, just so that I can create that groundwork on which I'll put all the general muck and filth that normally lives in a loco area. And of course, whilst all that is drying, I had time on my hands, so I painted the platforms. Now, I've been debating what I'm going to do about an overall roof at Trinity Square, and I've decided that I'm going to have a glass roof over the concourse and then individual canopies for each of the 2 platforms. So this is what the end building is going to look like. It's 2 stories high with a double apex roof to match the rough shape I expect to have on that concourse canopy. And an idea which I have unashamedly pinched from somebody else that I saw at an exhibition was a guy, it's actually an O-gauge layout, whose station building faced the front of the baseboard, but rather than just have it blanked off, he had modelled it from the inside looking out. So although it was only a couple of inches deep, he had a ticket office and a buffet and offices and the like within his station building. So I'm going to do the same here at Trinity Square. So the view that you get when you come into the room will not be a blank face like shown here, but will be the interior, probably 4 rooms inside that station building. Again, only an inch deep or so, but I've got bits of furniture and 1 or 2 other things. And of course, once the windows are cut and there's a arch cut through the centre for carriages to come onto the platform, it's going to look, hopefully, quite imposing. And that's where we are. So I'm off to Glasgow SEC for the Scottish National Exhibition. Don't forget to keep talking to each other. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.